absolutely certain that you always get the right response. Who would like that? You would, right? Who would like a voice that's like music to the ears of your clients, like their favorite music, because your voice is the perfect tone, tempo, and volume? Who would like that? Imagine sounding so good. Your voice is a powerful instrument to your sales career. And who would like their prospects to see clearly that they must buy from you now, to communicate your bright ideas in a way that is so crystal clear that everybody accepts your suggestions as sure as the sun will rise? Who would like that? You would, right? Of course you do. Well, welcome to this masterclass. Now, right now, some of you are sitting here, standing there, or doing some other thing, and all of you are listening to my words and hanging on every vibration and sound of my voice. And that's good to do, because what you're receiving today is valuable and the things are heating up. So trust me, this will change your life, because rapport could very well be the most important skill for everyone to master. And the good news, you can master it. You can master it because you're here now. And I know something about you, because being here now means you've got what it takes and you make good decisions, and you actually do have even more resources and resourcefulness than you are yet aware. No matter what you do, the ability to develop and maintain rapport with people of varying backgrounds, any seniority level in your industry, in an organization, anywhere in the world, means you will master your career. And you do want that, right? So now that you know why rapport really, really is important, let's get into what rapport is and then how you do it, okay? And what you get to know now is that rapport is very simple. It's a process of responsiveness, having a responsive client. It allows for a cooperative flow of energy and ideas to come together, and the ability to elicit the responses that you want in people, in your clients. So when you're on the phone, maybe you're sitting across the table, whatever it is you're doing, you're in a very focused way, eliciting specifically what they say, so you can support them in moving towards their best interest, if that is indeed to buy with you now. Now, we've all experienced that feeling when we dislike someone, okay? And you've also probably had experiences, meetings with clients, sales calls, and it all seems to flow and it feels so easy to get win-win results. And this really is the basis and the basics of rapport, because when people are like each other, they like each other. And when they're not, they don't. And it is pretty much that simple. Now, I'd love to share a visual with you to really lock this in and bring it home for you now. So bear with me and relax as I share my screen now. And what you can see here is a spaceship and a docking station. And there is a capsule docking into that docking station. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you now, we've all seen those movies, you know, that moment in the movie where it's getting closer and closer and closer, and the pilot, you know, the captain of the spaceship is trying to just sync things up, right? And so they connect, and then they're docked. Now, why is he trying to do that? Well, we've also seen those clips in the movies where if he doesn't do that, things blow up. And what you get to realize now, this is like your meetings. It's actually like every single conversation, every single connection of your life. Because if you're not in rapport, let's imagine in this scenario, let's say the captain does not dock that pod into the space station. Well, is it possible there's another way for someone in the capsule to get into the space station? Yes, there is. They could spacewalk. Is it possible they could get some of their materials across to the space station? Yeah, maybe it is. But obviously it's slower. There's risk. There's a cost. And what you get to know is if you're not in rapport with your client, with anyone, if you have a dog like that, with your dog, then they're actually just not going to listen. And you're bringing risk into every single deal you do. And the risk is that you blow the deal. Okay. Now, why is that? Because actually what you're about to learn today is once you're in sync with your client, you're able to communicate to them in a way that is actually going directly to their unconscious mind. So just remember that and lock that visual in. It's very important that you do rapport, that you synchronize with your client, and then things move easily and seamlessly towards the best result. And you can transfer, of course. Here we're not sending out spacemen for spacewalks, we're not sending out materials, but what are we sharing? Well, maybe it's your demo, maybe it's your pricing, whatever it is going to go over easier when you're in sync. Okay, so remember that. And remember this is what we do not want. And docking things in, synchronizing up seamlessly and easily is what you want every single time. So you will do that. Okay. And I want you to really lock in that this is magical, right? Some of this information could be blowing your mind, like blowing that spaceship, because you probably can think back to moments in your career where you thought, well, I really was saying the right thing. And I thought I was doing the right thing. And they just weren't interested, didn't go anywhere. Maybe you thought you had a really hot lead. Maybe it was really well pre-qualified and it didn't close. And the simple truth is you probably weren't in rapport. That rapport is magical because your communication literally goes directly into what's called a person's unconscious mind. And it bypasses the critical faculty. And we'll talk more about these terms in a moment. So what this means is a person will accept suggestions uncritically. When you can communicate outside a person's conscious awareness to get what you need to get across so that you can move together forward to the point where you close the deal. Okay, if that's your intention. You may have a different intention. Maybe it's simply that you're qualifying a lead. Whatever your intention is, when you're in rapport, they'll begin to accept your suggestions uncritically and move forward towards that goal. So the true beauty, you're learning this right now. The true beauty is that this happens whether or not the other person is actually trained in rapport. They don't need to be trained in it. Only you need to be trained in it to master it, to create deep connections, win-win relationships, to get the best results for you, for your client, first and foremost, and smash through sales targets. Now, let me break down some of these terms: unconscious mind, critical faculty. What is all this about? Let's drop into a mini training that your unconscious, that's right, your unconscious mind can rapidly integrate so you can become a master of rapport rapidly. Okay. So here it is. You probably already have guessed this is a submarine. And what you're seeing here is the top part of the submarine. Okay, it's above the water. It's easy to see, just like you can see me now. You can hear me now. Okay, so that's what's very apparent. Then there's something called the critical faculty. Now, depending on what you may have learned before, sometimes people talk about this being something called the corpus callosum, which is actually in the brain, unifies the hemisphere. Other people may be talking more from a quantum physics perspective, metaphysically, may actually also express this as being the connection between your mind and your heart. Now, right now, what we're focused on is this being a potential barrier. Okay, it's a potential barrier to the unconscious mind. So what is the unconscious mind? Well, the unconscious mind is that part of you that stores memories. It stores emotions. It learns logically. Okay, it hoovers things up, quite literally. And the subconscious mind is something different altogether, which is beyond the scope of today's training for you to master rapport. We could do a whole training on this. Another way to think about this would be a Hoover. Everybody, you probably have done some hoovering before, vacuumed before. So I want you to imagine that your conscious mind is you with the Hoover, and the critical faculty is your arm. And imagine that the Hoover is the unconscious mind. Now, unless you consciously direct the Hoover in a specific direction, it's not going to hoover up any of whatever it is you're hoovering up, right? And in this case, what we're interested in is data, because the things you say, what you sound like, and how you express yourself, that's all data and information that somebody else's unconscious mind, through sensory perception, using their eyes, using their ears, using their kinesthetic capabilities of touch, they're going to be hoovering up that data. And so unless you can successfully bypass the critical faculty, right, the arm, then the unconscious mind is not going to be going anywhere, and it's not going to be hoovering anything up, and it's not going to be receiving anything. So there is a connection between the conscious mind, the unconscious mind. In this metaphor, it's your arm, and you need that connection to be seamless. Now, for a lot of people, the critical faculty can actually be a barrier, and that's why you're probably not closing sales, because you're saying things to people's conscious mind. Or maybe you are closing sales, and if you are, that's great, and we'll do it better even more now after this training. Because when you speak to people's conscious mind, they're evaluating what you're saying, okay? They're processing the information. Does this make sense to me? Obviously, the answer is yes right now. And then there are those times for people out there where actually it's no, this doesn't make sense to me. Oh, I'm not really kind of actually following what you're saying, because you're trying to connect with them consciously, and it's information overwhelm. But by communicating to the unconscious mind, you're actually moving them along with you. And I'll give you another example, right? You probably have seen those robotics hoovers, okay? And the way they work is they receive signals. They receive messages that you and I actually can't see, right? But they are definitely moving to that machine. And it's going around hoovering very specific things up. And the true beauty is that you're there, maybe you're sitting on the sofa, or maybe you're out, you're doing some other thing. And in a very focused and specific way, the unconscious mind is receiving everything it needs to receive to get the job done. Now, just like this picture, what you'll see is actually, sure, there's a little man on top. He's looking out on the periscope out into the future. And using that periscope, he can see what's ahead. And we consciously can do that, right? You're looking at me now on the screen. You can see what's there. What a lot of people don't know is that there's a lot more power in your life coming from your unconscious mind. And the reason she's there with the clipboard is because really she's in charge. And often people will say the conscious mind is the goal setter. The unconscious mind is the goal getter. So you really do need to set goals clearly, but then your unconscious mind does it, right? You don't think to breathe. You don't think for your heart to beat. The unconscious mind is doing all of that for you. There is so much in life that if you'd only learn now, if you haven't already, to learn how to use your unconscious mind, you can basically get all of this force and all of this power working for you. And guess what? You can actually connect with the unconscious mind of another person. And the reason the ladders are here is because it's very important that you learn to do this through rapport, so that you can bypass the critical faculty. Otherwise, it's almost like there's a force field and the things you're saying are just bouncing off. So there are specific things that we can do to move through that and communicate unconsciously. Some more examples just to bring this home for you. What you're seeing here is down below deck in the unconscious mind, we've got radar, we've got radio, we've got communication, right? So you actually could, if you think you're a submarine, your client's a submarine, you actually can use these unconscious processes to send signals across to your client, and they'll be thinking, wow, this makes so much sense. And what you're going to learn today is they'll be feeling that, they'll be thinking that, and it almost doesn't matter what you actually say with your words. They'll be feeling like, oh my gosh, like, where did this person come from? This is the person I need to buy from. And you probably have felt that way with someone that allowed you to buy something, sold you something in the past, right? Because they're communicating in an unconscious way with the things that make you feel good, the things that move you forward to a decision. And you can do this in a specific way, which means that it's your command and control center. Now, the reason I've highlighted here, we've got ballistic missile tubes, we've got some things that really can cause some damage, so pressurized hull, we've got torpedo tubes, because you probably have had a relationship in your life, could be with a loved one, could be with a spouse or a partner, could even be with a client, where you thought everything was fine, right? Above the surface. And beneath that, there was some emotions. And just like these missiles, right, which fly up, something triggered an emotional response. And so someone maybe became volatile, maybe they became upset. Well, guess what? You actually can do the same thing with specific triggers to trigger feeling happy, to trigger feeling joyful, to trigger feeling like absolutely certain. And wouldn't you want that with your clients? Because then they'll feel the certainty that you're putting through to move forward to make a decision with you. So I really want you to get now that this section of the submarine, the unconscious mind, quite literally is one of the most powerful things that you can learn, both to utilize within you and ethically connect with in others. Now, when does an ideal client not buy? Well, firstly, you did not get in rapport. Okay, so you're not doing the things that you're learning today that you will do after this call if you weren't doing them already, and now you'll be doing them even more and better. You didn't elicit the right responses. What do I mean by that? Well, you can ask very specific questions in a focused way that will elicit a specific response. If you ask a poor question, you get a poor response. So think very carefully about the things that you say. And the more that you're in rapport, the more those questions will be received. And the third thing is actually listen. Listen actively and calibrate on what they say. And today I'm going to teach you some things where you can actually calibrate on the way they're breathing. You can calibrate on the way they're sitting, because all of that data, just think of it like algorithms, right? Artificial intelligence brings in data. Algorithms do things that create outputs. And that's the way you want to think about being with a client. There's data coming in from everywhere, literally the way they're breathing, the way they're sitting, the way they're blinking, and the things they're saying. And all of that flows when you're in rapport. So effective communication is clearly congruent. So always be congruent. What do I mean by congruent? Well, a lot of people say, oh, like, I just got to feel good about the thing that I'm selling, right? To feel congruent with that. And maybe that's true. I invite you to a new idea. For you to feel congruent, focus on the value that you're communicating. Focus on the value to your prospect. Focus on the value to your client. Think about them. For as long as your intention and your attention is going internal, then maybe you're thinking, well, okay, like, what's in this for me? How well am I doing? Is this going well? Is this going poorly? Put your attention out there with your clients, with your prospects, and feel congruent that you're getting them value. And also, being congruent means that if what you have is not actually right for them, you're not going to even let them buy. That might sound crazy, right? If you're in a sales role, if you're in the role of developing leads, qualifying leads, if you're in that role, maybe you're conditioned to think, well, it's sell, sell, sell. And I invite you, actually, it's not about that. It's really about enroll. And you can enroll people when, of course, you're in rapport and when you're thinking about their best interests, and they can feel it. So the true beauty is, because they feel it, it becomes easier. If you're trying to sell someone into something, you're out of congruence, they can feel it. And then, of course, they say no anyway. And if they do say yes, they often become challenging clients, problem clients down the line. Also, make sure that your communication is contextually appropriate. So this will depend on whether or not it's a technical sale, whether or not you're speaking to technical people, or you're speaking to perhaps procurement, because they have completely different needs of communication. Now, this makes most sense in the context of the linguistics. And what you'll learn today is that the language actually is only a very small part of being in rapport with someone. The third thing is calibrated to their consciousness. So this is the kind of language they'll be using, the technical terms they'll be using. Now, we can't necessarily know how evolved someone's consciousness is just through an initial interaction. There are some things that you could learn to do that would help you calibrate on that. But just be smart. Try to and intend to keep things simple. And the more simple you are with your language, the more easy it will be for them to receive what you're actually communicating to that unconscious part of their mind. And that's what's actually going to get you the deal. So now we will jump back to the core material. So what you're beginning to become aware of now, if you weren't already, is clearly this is powerful. And this means you must want the best outcome for your client. You've heard me say this a few times now, and I'm saying it again, because you never, ever want to control or manipulate people. Always be in integrity, right? And trust me, it's best for you, it's best for your clients. And the reason I say about being in integrity, the reason I say never control, never manipulate, is because you actually could do this with what I'm teaching you today. It's completely possible. This is so powerful that if you wanted someone to do something that was completely incongruent for them, not in their best interests, if you wanted to sell them a product that you knew ultimately, having really had a conversation and listened actively, was not going to help them achieve their goal, was not going to add value to their life, to their business, to their organization, if you wanted to do that, you could. So I want you to receive this in the highest level of integrity, the highest level of ethics, knowing that your career skyrockets when you're in congruence, when you're in integrity, when people long after buying from you are thinking, wow, I'm really great and glad that I had that result and I had that conversation. And they'll actually seek you out for more business. So just receive that, integrate that, and embody that. Always be in integrity. Now, I know you're wondering, okay, and it's good to wonder, where does rapport come from? I'm sharing all these insights, these ways that it's powerful, and you probably do want to become aware and notice how it's all science-based. Science-based, there was a study done in 1970, University of Pennsylvania, with a guy called Ray Birdwhistle. And the name of the study was Kinesics and Communication, discovering crucial things. What Birdwhistle discovered was that only 7% of our communication with somebody, with anybody, is the words that we use. 38% of our communication is communicated by the tone of voice, okay? So you can really use your voice to have more effective communication. And even greater, 55% of communication is by our physiology. And this is going on whether or not people are consciously aware of it. It's happening. The fact is 93%, that's right, 93% of communication is communicated unconsciously with the unconscious mind that is hoovering up all of that data through the eyes, through the ears, through touch. And that's happening for you all throughout your day. You know, as you're walking through the street in London or New York or California or wherever you are you really aware of everything that you're seeing? No, because your mind actually filters things for you, and there are specific ways that it filters them. Yet it's going on. No one would deny that if you looked at something on a shop, your eye actually sees everything, but what you register is only a fraction of that. So 93% is actually outside your conscious awareness. What we're learning today is how you can be part of that 93% with your clients rather than the 7%, which is just the words. So 7% words, 38% tonality, 55% physiology. And what this really means is a lot of what we're communicating is communicated unconsciously. So we clearly and you can now, want to consciously use the 93% of unconscious communication to serve clients and exceed targets. So what would the major elements of rapport be? Let's go through what the major elements of rapport are right now. And I'll make sure that you receive a PDF where you have all of this be written. It'll be clear for you. It'll be a PDF. Maybe it'll be some notes from the masterclass. You will get this. Okay, you'll have a summary that gives you everything you need to know, which you're receiving now too. So the major elements of rapport are called mirroring and matching. And you can apply this to your physiology, your posture, your gestures. You know, everybody unconsciously, you know, if I were to sort of sit here like this, well, that communicates a certain something. If someone was like this, that communicates a certain something. Now, the reason I'm saying a certain something is because everybody actually has different internal representations as to what that something is, depending on how they've experienced those things. You know, a lot of people out there think there are specific body language postures that mean, oh, well, this person's bored, this person's disinterested. That's actually untrue. Like, for you to master rapport, what you'll learn is when you're with a prospect, maybe you're on Zoom, maybe you can see obviously the way that they are expressing physiologically, the way they're breathing. And as they're speaking in a way where you can see they clearly appear to feel good, feel excited, feel animated, it's completely possible that that person actually does that like this or with their arms crossed. It's completely possible. It's not normal, yet it's possible. It's completely possible that someone else is in fact very bored and they're not moving at all. Maybe their arms are open, right? But, you know, some of the older information out there will say, well, they're bored because their arms are crossed. They could be completely present with you. So don't allow some of this misinformation out there to guide you in the wrong way. What you want to do is focus on the posture that you have, focus on the gestures, facial expressions, blinking and breathing in ways that I'm teaching you today so that you can apply rapport to this with your clients. Now, the voice is an interesting one. You've got vocal tone, tempo, timbre, volume, and we all know the voice is powerful. Everybody has a favorite song, and we may have a different song for a different context. Why is that? Because music makes us feel a certain way, right? Like if it's a song that maybe you heard in an arena and they're singing and it's powerful, maybe it's a rock concert, that's going to start to elevate the energy. If it was a song that could be in a completely different context, maybe a church, maybe it's a religious song, maybe it's a Christmas song, maybe it's a love song, they all evoke a different feeling. Now, I'm going to teach you how you can be present to your client, the way they're using their voice, the way they're speaking, and you're actually going to match them and mirror those qualities in their voice so that, think back to the space capsule, you're syncing up with them. Okay. The next thing is words as predicates. So you may hear some people, they'll be like, oh, I see what you mean. Other people will be like, oh, yeah, that resonates. For others, they'll be saying, oh, yeah, I like the sound of that. Now, they're actually saying the same thing. The first one, I see what you mean. See is a visual predicate. The second one, oh, that resonates. Well, resonance actually relates to the idea of vibration and sound, which is more of a kinesthetic, a feeling. The third one, oh yeah, I like the sound of that. Well, that's actually audible. Okay. So you've got visual, auditory, and kinesthetic ways that people can communicate. There's also auditory digital. And those are people who will say, oh, that makes sense. Now, that's not the only thing they'll say, but these are some examples. So I really encourage you to look up predicates of different primary representational systems so you can begin to get present to what your client is saying, and then you can match and mirror on that. For today, all you need to know is just match and mirror. Okay, as you get more advanced, someone might say, oh, I see what you mean. And you would say, oh, well, that's crystal clear, because clear is also visual, right? That's what we think, clear, clarity, sight. Now that matches as a predicate system, them saying, I see what you mean. But you don't need to know that right now. All you need to know is if they say, I see what you mean, well, guess what you say? Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, do you see what I'm saying? So you're going to match and mirror on predicates. Now, Also look out for keywords, common experiences, associations, content chunks. And I'm going to talk to you about what each of those are. So let me give you an example of a keyword. It's normally something idiosyncratic or a phrase, something peculiar to an individual. And actually, let me tell you a story. There was this guy I used to work with, and he was quite a character. And he worked in one of the companies that I founded. And any time he said anything, pretty much the end of every sentence, thinking back to this guy now, you know, he was really quite a funny guy. That's why I'm smiling, because I can imagine his face. He sort of looked a bit big clown hair. Imagine that, like big hair. And he was always very serious. He had this big sort of juxtaposition of big clown hair, I guess, you know, big hair like me, with this very serious face. And he would say, correct, correct, correct. Now, who says that, right? Very few people say that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just very idiosyncratic. It's very unique. So if you pick up on something like that, and you maybe meet this man, and you hear someone saying correct, 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 well, guess what you do? When you finish some of your sentences, you'll say, well, correct. Now, this might seem to some people, I've been asked questions in trainings before, well, is this disingenuous? Because, you know, I'm sort of playing back to them what they're saying to me. Well, I want you to just think back, bring up that picture of the spaceship blowing up, right? If you don't do this, you pretty much are blowing up the spaceship. If you do this, you're actually synchronizing with them. And just like the space station, you can begin to even orbit in absolute synchronicity with an easy flow, right? Those astronauts can just go back and forth. You know, all the information can go back and forth. So I want you to really integrate that, provided you are doing this in a high integrity way, where you're thinking about your client's best interest, and that's why you're showing up to a call, to a meeting, you're actually putting your time, your energy here now into learning this. You're putting your time, your energy into getting them a better result, because actually you can listen more when you're in rapport. You know, you're not switching off, you're not disengaged, you're not somewhere out there, you're here now, right? And so it's completely perfect and natural to develop mastery. That means you can be a master communicator. So just sort of integrate that, learning that lesson. People have asked that question before, some people out there, obviously everyone in here, we all know that this is a perfect thing to do that gets you results, gets your clients results. And it's especially useful in business, because when you're in rapport with someone, they're in rapport with you. This also means there's no one-upmanship, right? Have you ever been in a meeting where somebody's, you know, got the loudest voice, right? They have to have the last word. They're always disagreeing. There are some people out there like that, and I certainly hope for you that it's the people out there who have those meetings, and everybody in here has meetings with no one-upmanship. And guess how you deliver that? With rapport. Because when you're in rapport, you're in sync. So there's no competition. You're actually moving together towards a target, right? You're like two horses galloping in perfect synchronicity. It's almost as if they're physically connected and they're moving to the same target. So being in rapport also means you'll become more effective when there are industry specific words that you've not heard before, because it's easy and it's natural to simply say, well, can you clarify what you mean by that? Yeah, could you just clarify that for me? And they actually feel good clarifying. It can almost feel refreshing to them, because they actually really want to move forward towards the target with you, right? So if you ask a question that they know is moving towards the target, they feel good about that. But if you're out of rapport and they can feel that tension, and then you ask a question, they are more likely to think, oh, does this guy, or does this woman, does this sales professional, do they know what they're talking about? I actually don't know that they do. And no, I don't know that I want to answer that question or train you, right? Completely different energy. When you're in rapport, they're like, sure, yeah, I'd love to tell you about that. And there's actually this energy of appreciation that you're that curious, okay? It's also when you're doing more technical sales, it can be very useful, or selling into a technical buyer, because they love facts, they love figures, they love literal and specific words. You know, I used to work with some of the smartest people in the world. Quite literally, they were working on things like the Higgs boson particle. They're working at places like CERN. subatomic work, artificial intelligence, numerous different things of phenomenal intellectual sophistication. So they like facts, figures, literal and specific words because it gets them the results in their work. Okay. And sometimes if you're a non-technical salesperson, you might have been in a meeting where you think, oh gosh, this person's saying some things. I actually don't know what they're saying. Maybe inside, because your attention is inside rather than outside. Today we're learning that your attention gets to be with your clients. Maybe in the past you're thinking, well, I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what this means. Maybe I need to clarify. Maybe they'll think I'm not smart if I have to ask this question. The true beauty of being in rapport is that actually, yes, there'll be some technical words. Yes, there'll be facts and figures. You don't need to operate at this level of conscious communication to move them to the target. You're going to be moving unconsciously. You'll be breathing with them. So if they're breathing out, if they're speaking, you're breathing out. That's actually a pro tip there. Guess why? Because when someone is speaking, there is literally air leaving the body. So if they're speaking and they're saying these technical facts and figures before in the past, you might have had this like mental paralysis. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm going to need to look some of these things up after the meeting. Now you will still do that because of course you want to know and be an expert in your field on the things that are relevant. But at the same time now, as they're speaking, you just take a deep breath. And as they're speaking, you're just slowly breathing out. And that seems so subtle. I promise you, I guarantee that actually what you're doing at an unconscious level, you're beginning to develop rapport. Breathing is so powerful. You can even do this with animals. Actually, I have a dog, and with her, and I will breathe in a specific way as she's breathing because it actually synchronizes that energy. So then when I do give verbal commands, stop, run, guess what? She receives it because it's actually going directly through the critical faculty into the unconscious mind. And we'll go more into the how very soon from now. What you get to know is that with rapport, you'll get the sale if the sale was there to be got. Over time, this will be true. It may not be true today meaning yesterday or sometime in the past for you. It will be true going forward because with rapport, with the ideal client, you're always going to be operating in their best interests. You're going to be moving towards a shared aim, a shared goal. You won't even think about your targets eventually because you'll have worked out how many calls you need to make, how many of those will need to convert, and at what price point, depending on which sector or industry you're in, the terms of the deal. So that's all mapped out. The strategy's done. And then you're just picking up the phone, actually enjoying doing that, seeing how good it's going to be that they feel happy that you called because you're the first person to call where they actually felt heard, understood, and served. Okay? So you don't need to get caught up in unconscious posturing about who is the smarter. You don't need to display intellect or technicality. No, all you need to do is be present in the here, in the now, and communicate to their unconscious mind. So rapport allows you to get your ideas across regardless of content, okay? To create responsiveness regardless of the depth of domain expertise, responsiveness being, right, that they're moving with you, those two horses galloping together. You know, it's almost as if you become, you know, another metaphor here, if the jockey on that horse is the conscious mind and the horse is the unconscious mind, and the saddle is that critical faculty through which there's a connection. It's almost by you being an effective communicator, you're almost the jockey to their horse, their unconscious mind. You're actually directing where it will go to the finish line, right? To the finish line, which is closing the sale, if that's the right thing to do, if it's ethical for that client. Okay. Now that, to me, when I learned this, I was like, wow. Because finally I realized when I was maybe raising capital for one of the companies, and, you know, I literally had a meeting once, you know, we landed in the country, jumped off the plane. We literally got a taxi to the meeting, and it was maybe 30 minutes from the airport. We left the bags in the car. We literally left the Uber running outside. We said, we'll be out in a moment. Literally in the space of somewhere between 30, maybe 45 minutes, this investor committed $500,000, and we were back in the Uber. We then went back to the airport, got on the plane, and flew to another place in that country. And it was all so easy because we were in rapport. Okay. And of course, there are other meetings where, for whatever reason, because you didn't know what you know now, you haven't had that natural flow, that natural exchange of energy and ideas where everyone's in pure and positive intent moving to the same outcome, which is actually, when you really think about it, you just completing the phone call, knowing that you asked the right questions, that you really did listen, that if there was a chance to bring them to your product, to your service, to your opportunity, and it made sense for them, that you allowed them to do that through effective communication and being in rapport. Now that is so, so powerful, right? Now there are 4 indicators of rapport, and these are things for you to become aware of, okay? So this is how you'll know you're in rapport. Number 1, okay? So number 1, the first indicator of rapport is feeling a warmth inside your body. You literally will feel this almost like warm glow, right? And maybe you felt that way with someone, you know, a close family member where you're so happy to see them, or a friend, and it's like the first time you've seen them in a long time, and you're like, wow, and you start to feel this warmth. Like, you actually will feel that when you're in rapport with people. A second indicator of rapport is a color change from the neck up, right? So normally you'll actually see to the face begins this color, this slight sort of warmth, this tint, and that's because of the blood flow. The third indicator of rapport is when a client says something like, oh, I feel like I've known you before. Like, oh, were you at such and such place? Or, you know, do I remember you? Were you at my college? You know, because they actually feel like they've known you before. That's how connected you are. And that may or may not be true. The fourth indicator of rapport is more commonly taught, and it's what happens. Okay, so when you shift in position, they'll follow you to a new position. So, you know, if I were there and you were here now, and you're sitting across from me, and maybe your arms are crossed, and to begin with, to get into rapport, I'm going to be crossing my arms, and we'll be exchanging information, a cooperative flow of energy and ideas. And once I'm there with you, once that connection, the spaceship, right, is made, once I know it's made, well, guess what? I could move in a completely different way. So I could open my arms. And what you'll subtly see is they do the same thing. So that's how you know you're in rapport. And guess what? If you're not in rapport, what do? You calibrate, you change it. You calibrate, you change it. There's no such thing as being unable to get into rapport. Of course, there is such a thing as doing it fast enough. If you don't do it fast enough, well, the meeting could be over before you got into rapport. You can actually get into rapport with anyone, any animal, pretty much anything. Okay, just be clear on the purpose for which you're doing it. So how do you get into rapport? Well, the first major element of rapport is matching and mirroring. I've alluded to this already, and it's literally matching and mirroring physiology, their posture, their gestures, facial expressions, their eye blinking, their breathing. And there's a very specific and precise way to do this, right? So I just adjusted my hair like that. Well, I mean, it would only make sense if you had long hair. You actually could do the exact same thing, right? And then you would be matching me very specifically. Another example might be that they have their right leg crossed over their left leg. So you will also cross your right leg over your left leg. Now, if you were sitting in front of a mirror and you cross your right leg over your left leg, well, it would look like the person in the mirror. So for me, that's the man in the mirror is actually crossing their left leg, right? Because it's the mirror image. So mirroring is where it literally looks like a mirror image. So if they're crossing their right leg over their left leg, you cross your left leg over your right leg. Matching, they're crossing their right leg over their left leg, you're crossing your right leg over your left leg. Okay. And what you get, obviously, with mirroring is an exact reflection. So if you raise your right hand now, keep it up, keep your right hand up. Okay. Now that's matching. And if you were to now put your right hand down, okay. Now this time I want you to put your left hand up. Okay, that's mirroring because it's literally a mirror image. You also can do something that's quite ninja, and that's called crossover mirroring, and it's more subtle. So what you can do, instead of maybe they're crossing their legs, you actually can cross their arms, applying the same principles and information. So they're crossing their legs, you're crossing your arms. They're crossing their arms, you can cross the legs. And what this does, it's pretty phenomenal. It still creates the energetic connection. There are some even more subtle things. So maybe, you see these people, they're like tapping their foot like this. You actually could just have your hand on the table. And this is where it gets phenomenal. In a longer training, maybe we can talk more about the quantum physics aspect of this. They don't even need to see your hand. You could have your hand on the table, literally doing the same motion with a finger as their foot. And you're actually developing that cooperative flow of energy and ideas. Another element is the breathing. Okay. So like a lot of people, sometimes you'll see they're breathing up here in the chest. And like, there are people that breathe like that. They don't breathe in the belly, right? And so you can breathe in with them when they breathe in. You breathe out when they breathe out, and you can match that in the chest. Maybe someone else tends to be people that talk more about feelings and are more associated into their feelings. They breathe in the belly. So you're just going to breathe in and out with them, just like synchronized swimming. And it's like that synchronicity creates the rapport. Okay. And now you also want to match the modality of the person that you're with. And so what I can tell you, just as I said, the kinesthetic element is normally in the belly. And this is interesting because actually the stomach and these organs here is where we actually store a lot of emotions. Here in the chest, you'll see visual people. They're tend to talk faster. They tend to see more in pictures. They'll work a lot better when you're showing them visual information. It's not 100% guarantee, but normally if someone is naturally breathing in the chest, unless they've trained themselves to actually connect more with their parasympathetic nervous system through belly breathing, they're likely to be a visual person. So you talk faster, you show them slides, you show them images. It's like quick, move through, done. If it's someone who's more kinesthetic, it's like, is this resonating with you? And there's a sort of more breath-like element to it, and it's flowing. And you can bring all of this to the right meeting at the right time. Now, the second major element of rapport is the voice. And you've heard me today, you've felt it. Voice, tone, tempo, timbre, volume. Matching that is extremely powerful. Okay. And some people talk really loud, right? Really, really loud. And it's like, yes, like I have this product and, we're getting these results. And like other people are saying, like we've just brought this thing to market and it's doing really well. And guess what? Like, we're actually doubling month over month. So clearly if you come in like, we're doubling month over month, like this person's thinking, oh my gosh. But actually if you match them and you're like, wow, that's so interesting. How are you doing that? What's working for you? Like, tell me more about that. Like, see what I mean? Like they're actually going to connect with you. So the voice is one of the most underrepresented systems that we have today, because there's a lot of image-based content out there, Instagram, YouTube. Sure, there can be an audible element to it. It's primarily, there's a lot of visual connection going on. So you can really use the voice very subtly. Other ways we can do this, common experiences. You'll often, people say, oh, did you go to this university? Oh, like, where do you live? And often because they're looking for a common experience in interests, backgrounds, values. So a lot of people do that. It's really more, I would say, a basic level of rapport. Absolutely do it because people like it. Just don't convince yourself that you're in rapport because you went to the same university as someone else. You live in the same neighborhood. No, it doesn't mean you have rapport. It might mean it's an element of getting into rapport, but it also doesn't necessarily mean anything. So I want you to focus on the postures. I want you to focus on the breathing. I want you to focus on their eyes. I want you to focus on blinking. Yes, if they blink, you can subtly blink. And guess what? It actually creates that synchronicity. So this can be so, so powerful. Also match content chunks. Now, this is essentially the chunk size of information. You probably have sent text messages to someone. Maybe you've got a friend, maybe you've got a client. You'll send, oh, like, how are you doing? Like, what's up? And they say, I'm great. And then someone else says, oh, well, I'm great. Like, I just went to this country and I just went to this place and I'm studying this new thing and work's going really well. And my targets, like I'm going like right through my targets, getting massive bonuses. And literally from the same question, that's chunk size, right? So this person clearly is they're really in the details, large chunks of information. It's one of those WhatsApps that sort of goes right down. You're really literally scrolling the same message, and other people are like, yes, no. So you want to be that way, which means if you ask a question and they're very succinct with their answer, doesn't mean they're not interested. It means you're succinct with your question back. You're going to ask another one, and you're going to actually have this more back and forth like tennis, right? Going back and forward, exchange information, moving forward, rather than these big sort of monologues. Now, if they do that, it likely does mean you also will be adding a little more detail to your responses so they feel that you're really with them. If they give you a lot of information about the business, like, you're going to need to be interested and also bring a certain matched response to them. Okay. Now, let me let you in on a little secret. And this really is something that no one out there that I have seen yet is doing it, which is great, because being here now means you're ahead of the curve. And pay attention, because we're going to a whole new level in these last 7 minutes that we have. So stay with me, pay attention, stay focused. This is for you and your career. Well, it's a whole new level, and it changes the game, right? We all have felt afraid in the past, and we know how that felt, okay? And we usually can feel when a person is afraid. We've also felt other emotions like courage, joy, peace, love, and we know they feel different now. Every energetic frequency and vibration has a mapped emotion, right? It matches up. So when you're feeling peace and calm and joy, you're literally vibrating at an energetic and vibrational frequency. So why does this matter to you in your job with clients? Let me tell you, the higher emotional frequencies, so that's love, that's peace, that's joy, right? This passion directly correlate with concentration level. Concentration increases when a person focuses on positive, congruent outcomes flowing from positive thoughts. So if you're in those states, well, guess what? You're concentrating more on what? The result, on your client. And guess what they're doing? They're going to match you with the frequency, and they'll be concentrating on you. If you're getting into an emotion that is unresourceful, maybe you're afraid, well, that actually maps to loss of concentration. So not only will your fear transfer to them, you're also, and then they won't feel confident in moving forward with you, you're also going to move them to concentrate less on what you're actually doing, what you're saying, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So bring a certain state, a certain emotion. And you can do this very easily, right? Like if I were to say to you, oh, can you remember a specific time, like right now, where you felt so confident, like so powerful? Go right back to that time now, like drop right down into your body, like see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt, like so confident, so powerful, like just like that, you're there. And so you can bring that to every interaction, every call that you have to make sure that you're in those higher frequencies, those higher energies. And then there's absolute concentration, right? It's like kind of feeling like you're in flow. The other reason I want you to focus on this is because everything that you've learned today, the spaceship metaphor, it's about bringing harmony to an interaction. It's about bringing, in sales, sometimes people think about what they're taking. Okay, well, I'm having this call, and from this call, maybe I'm going to receive some commission. Not right now. Maybe it is right now. But if you're thinking about what you're receiving, if you're thinking about what you're taking, guess what you are unconsciously communicating, metaphysically communicating to that person? You are, because they are literally, and there's a deeper training on this, it's the idea of projection is perception. You are literally creating in them the same energy that I am taking from this call. So they want to extract information, right? They're not bringing to the call, but what do you need them to bring to the call to move forward with you? Well, the willingness to deploy resources on what you can offer. So you want to bring an energy of bringing. So just take that idea of commission, here and put it to the side, set a strategy, get your numbers right so you know you're making the right number of calls and that you have certain number of outcomes from those calls, and it moves you through to, let's say, 10-20% over your target, and you've mapped all of that out already. Set it and forget it with the conscious mind. Let your unconscious mind get your results. So every single time you're about to get on the phone, you're about to get into a meeting, you're thinking, what can I bring to this experience? Well, you can always bring a certain energy. You can always bring a certain excitement, right? Enthusiasm, passion, congruence, because you're focused on them getting the best result. And because you're doing all of that, you're bringing energy, you're bringing information. Like, it's like, what do I know that this person does not yet know? That when they've asked the one question means they're ready to buy. But you don't need to have that prepared. It's just you're thinking about them. You're thinking about what they need. You're putting your interests somewhere out there. You're putting their interests here in the heart, and you're moving forward towards results. Guess what happens? Because you're bringing energy, bringing information, bringing the will to provide. They bring resources, they bring energy, they bring time, they bring attention. Both people bringing. What do you have? You have two people, two parties willing to transact, willing and enjoying. And it goes beyond the transaction, because now that you have rapport, now that you have that powerful connection, these are connections that will serve you through your career. Wherever you are, you will go higher. Your network will grow wider. And if you had financial goals, financial targets, and you absolutely deserve to receive all the money in the world that maps to the value that you create. So it's great that you have that, but what you'll start to see is that the money in your bank account is a scoreboard for the value that you provide for your clients. And it will feel so good to be in rapport, to do this, to listen to this training again. For some of you, this has gone all the way into the unconscious mind, and that probably is you. Even if you're not consciously aware of it, I've been teaching and training today in such a way that this is true. So you actually do know this. If you were to jump on a call now, you'd already begin to start breathing with someone, matching and mirroring. And you're going to keep listening until you're both consciously aware and unconsciously aware, embodying and bringing this to your career so you can go further and you can go faster. Thank you for joining this masterclass today. I wish you all the mastery and success in your life and your career.
Thank you, Tom. That was incredibly powerful. Much appreciated. I'm just going to end the stream now and then we can chat.
Yeah, and we got tight on time, so I had to not do the bit where I invite you in. But next time.